Testing 1 2 3. Testing 1 2 3. This is Radio Free Mormon on the air, broadcasting behind enemy lines. Tonight's episode, Rosebud. Now Rosebud files a bar complaint against RFM. Yes, me. This is the third bar complaint that I have now received over doing nothing but podcasting, actually having nothing to do with my practice of the law. I'm now pretty much retired from my practice of the law, but it looks like the rest of my law practice in the future will be consumed with responding to bar complaints. If you don't know who Rosebud is, well, you may remember her or you may find out through the course of this podcast. She has been John Dehlin's stalker, his personal version of Glenn Close, for over 10 years now. And she decided that she was going to file a bar complaint against me because everybody else is doing it. Why not jump on the bandwagon? This is a bar complaint that I actually knew was coming in advance of receiving it from the Bar Association. These are usually done by email now. An email bar complaint is sent in. They look at it for about a week usually. Then they send it out to the person or the lawyer against whom the complaint has been made. So there's a lag there, a delay of about a week. But I knew that I was going to be receiving it from the Bar Association before I received it. And that's a bit unusual, but there's a story behind that. And I'll tell you what that story is right now. I have mentioned before that for many years, I have been a commenter over at a message board called Discuss Mormonism. And it's a wonderful message board full of very, very intelligent people. And all of them know an awful lot about Mormonism. Most of them are post-Mormons, I would say that's fair to say, but they're also very thoughtful and very generally very caring, kind, and good people, but very, very smart people. Anyway, this is a forum where Rosebud, when she decides she wants to make an entrance for whatever reason, she'll drop by, she'll bomb the board with her posts every year or so. And I guess the moon was full, the year was up, and earlier this month of March of 2024, she went over to Discuss Mormonism and posted a couple of threads, and one of them was about me. I don't think I saw this on the very day it was posted. It might have been a day or two later that I saw that there was a post there with my name or RFM in the title. So let me find this for you. Here it is. This is what it said. It was titled RFM and Washington State Bar Complaints. And you can see there it says Rosebud right underneath it. It was Saturday. It looks like it was March 5th, 2025. At any rate, the print is rather small on that screen and on this screen as well, unfortunately. However, what she does is she says, I don't have the patience for RFM to listen to his podcasts or watch his YouTube videos. Pity that. Especially since he was so instrumental in helping John, that would be John Dehllin, I presume, so instrumental in helping John with the retaliations I used this board to keep at bay for so long. If you're having trouble understanding what she's saying, join the club. Nobody knows what she means by this. But when I saw that someone else had reported him to the Washington State Bar on his YouTube feed, so apparently she was looking at my YouTube feed, just not my YouTube videos, I felt I needed to add a third complaint to the stack. I sent the form in yesterday. I suppose you can podcast about it if you want, RFM, but in my opinion, you're making yourself and the Washington Bar look really bad. Yeah, her opinion means a lot to me. So there were a couple of other comments. I didn't reproduce the entire thread. It goes for about 3 pages. But the two that were right under that was one from Drum Dude saying, that's unfortunate because RFM did a fantastic job of explaining how bar complaints are not the place to voice your dislike of any particular lawyer. And the bar couldn't care less that you think he's a jerk. And then Dwight added, at least I guess this will result in yet another entertaining episode smacking down abusive bar complaints. You are correct, Dwight. As Drum Dude said, you might have saved yourself a lot of trouble or at least better prepared your complaint if you took the time to listen. Well, there's a number of other comments that go on, but here is another screenshot. I think this is from page 2 of the thread, when I did see that Rosebud had made that comment about filing a bar complaint against me, and I simply reproduced it, and then I responded below, "Thank you for taking the time to type out my response to your bar complaint." And then another attorney, Race Ipsa, on the board said, "Hat tip to you, sir." I guess he appreciated that response. I thought it was a pretty good response. So let's go to the third and final screenshot that I have from this thread, because Rosebud wants to say something else. And this is what she wants to say. What she said was, on March 12th, "I mean, to be fair," this is Rosebud speaking, "I mean, to be fair, I set out to have an affair in my late 30s. That was my goal, to be honest. I didn't comprehend anything about sexual harassment at that time, but now I sure do. I'm over the embarrassment of it all. I know what I did and why." And that was sexual harassment all the way through. It sounds like she's the one who was setting out to have the affair. But she says that was sexual harassment all the way through, and far worse considering John's abusive behaviors and then the retaliation. "Too bad I didn't get the affair I needed." It sounds like she's saying she didn't have an affair with John Dehlin, and it's in print. "Too bad I didn't get the affair I needed. Yes, by that point in my life, needed is the right word, even if TBMs will gasp. But from my perspective, at least I'm not trying to make money making YouTube videos about bar complaints people have filed against me. Honestly, embarrassing. Any more embarrassing than filing baseless bar complaints against attorneys whose podcasts you just don't happen to like, or whose friends you happen to have some kind of vendetta against?" And then Drum Dude says, "The Washington State Bar never saw it coming. How could they ever plan for the eventuality that a mousy homewrecker might send them frivolous complaints? This could be precedent setting." That's Drum Dude. Like I said, they're very, very intelligent, clever, witty people on this discussion board. And I recommend it to you highly if you ever want to have that kind of a discussion with others. Okay, so I knew that I was expecting a bar complaint. I just didn't know when. I know it takes about 7 days for it to show up, and I was waiting for it, but not with great expectation or anticipation. I figured that this would go pretty much the same way as the other bar complaints by Jen Kamp and her friend, that she got to file a different bar complaint against me. I'm forgetting her name right now, but that's just as well. But before we get to that bar complaint, which did arrive a few days ago, let's have this word from our sponsor, my friend and producer of the show, Bill Reel.
Hello, friends of Mormon Discussion Incorporated. I'm Bill Reel, founder and CEO, reaching out to our incredible community. Our mission is to support those examining the truth claims of Mormonism and those redefining their relationship with it. Our acclaimed lineup of podcasts, including Mormonism Live, Radio Free Mormon, Mormon Discussion, and others, offers a space for truth and healing. But we need your help. Your donations power our work, expanding our outreach, improving our content, and creating new initiatives. Visit mormondiscussions.org, click the donate button, and make a difference today. Donate to your favorite show, like this one, as your support empowers us to empower others. Thank you for being a part of the change. Together, we're making real impact.
Thank you very much, Bill Reel, for that unsolicited endorsement and announcement. All right, now we get to the bar complaint, which did arrive from Rosebud by email. Let me find this and put it up on the screen for you. And here we go. You see, it's to the Washington State Bar Association, grievance against a lawyer. It was received on March 8th, 2024. Information about you, name, Anne McMullin Peffer. That is Rosebud, Anne McMullin Peffer. I deleted or redacted her address, her phone number, and her email address in order to protect her privacy. There's my name over here, which I've redacted. She uses my name throughout, of course. Now let's get down into the body of this grievance. Explain your grievance in your own words. Give all important dates, times, and places. She goes on, RFM used his podcast to help a public figure who sexually harassed me retaliate against me. I was sexually harassed by the public figure, John Dehlin. Yeah, that's quite an allegation you've had going for over 10 years now, and it's too bad that the evidence doesn't stack up in favor of it. While I was a volunteer and employee of DeLynne's nonprofit during 2011 and 2012, that is over 10 years ago. And move on, please, for your own good. DeLynne is the host of the popular podcast Mormon Stories that is affiliated with an Arizona 501c3 called the Open Stories Foundation. On his podcast, DeLynne publicly portrays himself as a women's and gay rights ally. In reality, DeLynne uses his extreme power as a podcaster and public figure to attempt to intimidate women he has sexually harassed into silence. In addition to firing me after I reported our sexual relationship, which I guess wasn't an affair, our sexual relationship to DeLynne's board president, DeLynne took multiple actions of further retaliation in an attempt to completely silence me and anything I might have to say about what occurred between us during my employment. DeLynne's retaliations included taking a few texts and emails I had written, she admits to writing them, out of context and using them to convince others that I am crazy and that I tried to extort him. It's amazing that she had the chance to provide any emails or texts that she wanted to provide the context that she says is missing. But apparently she never did that because it sounds like really they weren't taken out of context at all. Isn't that right, Anne? And then seeking to harm my future employability by doing everything he could to widely publicly expose my full name. That would be Anne McMullin Peffer. Or is it Anne Peffer McMullin? Excuse me for a second. Anne McMullin Peffer. Excuse me. My full name, expose my full name in association with my sexual harassment claim and our sexual relationship. DeLynne took these actions while I had no ability to speak to the public myself without filing a lawsuit and getting an attorney. Yet, unfortunately, there was little opportunity for me to take legal actions because the federal government mandates that an organization have more than 15 employees in order for sexual harassment to exist. Yeah, I don't think that's exactly what the law says. DeLynne has the power of a male public figure with a podcast that has hundreds of thousands of listeners. He has donors to pay his attorney's fees. Without the government having laws to protect employees of small businesses, I have only had the power of a woman's voice on the internet. DeLynne's powerful retaliations have always been very extreme and difficult to manage from a place of such relative powerlessness. But I have done what I can to document the problem in an effort to protect myself and other women from the employment and financial difficulties that are associated with being publicly retaliated against by an angry and powerful public figure with a large podcast feed. I did a fairly good job at keeping the worst of DeLynne's retaliations at bay, creating documentation and making it clear to his board of directors that I expected DeLynne not to use my name in his publicity about what happened between us. This worked until DeLynne convinced RFM to use RFM's podcast and RFM's status as a member of the Washington Bar Association to help DeLynne publicly advertise DeLynne's version of what transpired. Yeah, he didn't convince me to do that. I got the evidence from the board. This was happening a few years ago, by the way, for those of you who don't remember, when once again, Rosebud was coming after John DeLynne and coming after OSF, which he does like every year or so. It's kind of like it, except there it's every 27 years where the monster comes out and tries to eat the children. With Anne, it's just every year that she does that with John DeLynne and OSF. And they'd finally had enough of it. They had kept evidence that they had not public, hoping that Anne would move on and just stop, get a life. But she wouldn't. So finally, they released that information to me. I did do a podcast about it. I talked with a couple of witnesses who were members of the board at OSF back then and currently, so we could get the truth out there. And it is the truth that is driving Rosebud bonkers, even more bonkers than she already is. So with these matters, so I could be further financially and reputationally harmed. I'm not doing anything to your reputation that you're not doing in spades to your own reputation already. And It is entitled Sexual Allegation Against John DeLynn Goes Down in Flames and can be found at, and there she gives the address. I'm sure the Bar Association watched it. But you should, if you want to refresh yourself on the details of that. For the record, never once has the Open Stories Foundation asked me for any documents regarding what occurred between DeLynn and myself. Yeah, I think that's likely not true. They have only accepted DeLynn's out-of-context documents. Never once has an investigation been done. Why would that be? Is it because she said she didn't want one done? Just after I reported the harassment in 2012, I rescinded my right to an investigation in writing. It is because she didn't want one done. She blames OSF for not conducting an investigation, and then in the very next sentence says she rescinded her right to have an investigation, and she did it in writing. Well, why did she do that? But at that point in time, I had hope that the Open Stories Foundation board would protect me from DeLynn's retaliations and allow me to continue my work. That obviously did not happen. No investigation was done. Well, that's because she said she didn't want one done. And no protection was offered. In an effort to protect myself from future retaliations and document what had occurred, I ended up filing a complaint with the New Hampshire Human Rights Commission. We covered that in that episode as well. Because I lived in New Hampshire at the time, and New Hampshire only required 6 employees to prompt an investigation of sexual harassment. Yet, that complaint could not move forward to amended complaints and investigations because the Open Stories Foundation was able to show that its 6th employee wasn't paid enough money to be counted as an employee under New Hampshire law. If that investigation had moved forward, I would have been vindicated. If that investigation had moved forward, I would have most certainly amended my complaint. Why didn't you get it right the first time, Anne? I most certainly would have amended my complaint to better reflect the entirety of the matter instead of the few words I felt strong enough to muster on the date I filed it. Oh my gosh, she's such a victim. Yet it was those few words and DeLynn's out-of-context documents. Once again, she claims they're out-of-context documents. She has never refuted that they're accurate, by the way. That's important. She has never even contested that they're accurate. All she says is that they're out of context and then refuses to provide the context. Okay, Anne. Yet it was those few words that DeLynn's out of context documents that RFM felt good about publicizing on his podcast. Yeah, I do feel good when I podcast and publish the truth, Anne. You got a point there. In order to help DeLynn further harm my employability, that's nonsense, by getting my name widely into the public domain, like you did when you filed this bar complaint against me. RFM evidently became Mr. DeLynn's retaliatory solution. RFM not only offered DeLynn a podcast feed. I mean, is she talking about RFM as compared to Mormon Stories? I mean, that's kind of small compared to Mormon Stories, but okay. That possibly DeLynn's board wouldn't object to DeLynn using. She just makes stuff up, doesn't she? So DeLynn is doing this and the board doesn't object, so it's okay for it to be on RFM's podcast. Right. But also the credibility that comes with being a member of the Washington State Bar Association. Again, that podcast can be seen here, and she repeats the address as if you didn't get it the first time, on the preceding page. Again, that podcast can be seen here. For the record, years later, when the Open Stories Foundation publicly announced a new sexual harassment policy, I requested an investigation in an attempt to get help managing DeLynn's retaliations. That investigation was denied. Not true. They went back and did a review, and they determined that the initial investigation was done appropriately and the correct conclusion was reached, if memory serves, because we talked about that in that podcast. That can be seen here. That investigation was denied. Not true, I think. No one from the open, unless she's going to split hairs and say they didn't do a new investigation. They just did a review of the old investigation, which she also said they never did. No one from the Open Stories Foundation Board of Directors has ever to date asked me for a statement or a document. Yeah, I doubt that's true too. I also am not mentally troubled, as RFM has claimed publicly in other places. And she gives a YouTube start at 1 hour and 22 minutes. Yeah. The reality is that I demonstrated my competence during my employment at Mormon Stories, and that I have demonstrated my competence in documenting DeLynne's offenses to try to minimize his retaliations since that time. I acknowledge DeLynne's ability to use a few texts and documents out of context to try to claim otherwise. Again, she's not denying they're accurate. She's claiming they're out of context without providing the context that would make it say what she says they should really say. But out of context allegations are not representative of the entirety of a matter. So give us the entirety, Rosebud. I am also a respected professional in my field with a master's from Harvard University. It is my competence, not my lack of competence, or the fact that I am mentally troubled, that have helped me document this matter and that have gotten me to the place in which I am filing this complaint. You know, Rosebud, just a hint, nothing says a person is mentally troubled more than telling absolute strangers over and over again that they're not mentally troubled. I also share the following information about child sexual abuse exposures in the Latter-day Saint Church, because the larger story is that DeLynne is publicly presenting himself to be standing up for women's rights, while in reality, he egregiously harms women's rights. Likewise, DeLynne harmed Jen Kamp, another former Open Stories Foundation employee and Washington State Bar complainant against Radio Free Mormon. In relation to the matter of child sexual abuse media exposures, it is therefore relevant for you to know that DeLynne also publicly presents himself to be someone who is working to expose child sexual abuse in the Latter-day Saint Mormon Church, while in reality, DeLynne is working to cover up the organized child sexual abuse that is finally in the initial stages of being criminally prosecuted in Utah. DeLynne's efforts to cover up organized child sexual abuse are demonstrated by DeLynne's podcast against victims and therapists who have sought to expose the problem in order to protect future children. And there she gives an address of a Mormon Stories, Dr. David Frankfurter, The History of Rumors of Satanic Abuse. Oh, satanic abuse. That's what she's talking. She believes in the satanic abuse, the ritual satanic abuse stuff. Right. Okay. Because obviously nobody who's mentally troubled would believe in satanic ritual abuse. In order for Latter-day Saint Mormon children to be safe, the LDS Church and the state of Utah need to address the reality that many child sex offenders work together. Child sex trafficking, why on earth does this belong in a bar complaint against me? And then she says other examples can be found through searching satanic ritual abuse on mormonstories.org. In order for Latter-day Saint Mormon children to be safe, the LDS Church and the state of Utah need to address the reality that many child sex offenders work together. Child sex trafficking is a form of organized crime, having multiple offenders and involving multiple children. Yet the Latter-day Saint Mormon Church and the Boy Scouts of America, which is currently distributing billions of dollars, I'm not sure they're distributing it yet, but she says, which is currently distributing billions of dollars in a trust to thousands of sexual abuse victim plaintiffs, continue to use child protection policies that only require 2 adults to be present during activities involving children. Because child sex traffickers work together, the presence of 2 adults obviously does little to prevent trafficking. And I'm not exactly sure what she expects the Washington State Bar Association to do about this. Yet, Radio Free Mormon has helped DeLynne harm Jen Kamp after DeLynne fired Kamp when she also reported DeLynne to his board of directors. DeLynne publicly announced live on the air to thousands of listeners that Jen Kamp was a victim of child sexual abuse in the Latter-day Saint Mormon Church without first receiving Kamp's consent to air the story. Yeah, there's a lot that's wrong with that allegation, like everything. And if you go back and look at the stuff I've done about Jen Kamp, you'll know why it is that that is absolutely contrary to the facts. I know it's what Jen Kamp would like it to be, and I know it's what Rosebud would like it to be, but that's not the way it happened. DeLynne does whatever he can to take credit for exposing child sexual abuse committed by individual offenders, while simultaneously seeking to help cover up organized child sex trafficking in Utah by using red herrings like satanic ritual abuse. Okay. And the Washington State Bar Association is now involved due to Radio Free Mormon's YouTube videos about these allegations and your organization. See Gene Kamp, Jeen, I think that means Jen Kamp, tries to get RFM disbarred. See, Jen Kamp loses bar complaint against RFM. See, RFM gets another bar complaint, and then she could add another one. See, Rosebud files bar complaint against RFM and loses. Yeah, we'll get to that here in a second. She concludes, this is all highly unethical. Why? Because she says so. This is all highly unethical, and Radio Free Mormon's YouTube videos reflect poorly on the Washington State Bar. Okay, so there's the end of that. Now, this was a bit unusual because usually when I get a bar complaint, I get the bar complaint and I'm asked to give at least a preliminary response. On only one other occasion before this have I received the bar complaint at the same time as I have received the dismissal of the bar complaint. This was one of those times. And on the very same date that the Bar Association emailed me Rosebud's bar complaint against me, as an attachment, they also attached their dismissal of her grievance. And what you can tell from that is that it was completely without merit. They did not even ask me to file a response. The Bar Association summarily dismissed Rosebud's complaint against me. And here is the dismissal of the grievance that was mailed to me on that same day. It's from the Washington State Bar Association, Office of Disciplinary Counsel, dated March 15th, 2024. Beware the Ides of March. And that's to you, Rosebud. Beware the Ides of March, March 15th, via email only to Anne McMullin Peffer regarding ODC file. That it gives a number, your grievance against lawyer Radio Free Mormon. Dear Anne McMullin Peffer, we analyzed the information you provided in your grievance complaint against a lawyer and considered whether there would be sufficient evidence upon which to base a disciplinary proceeding. You've probably read enough of these now with me that you can recognize that a lot of this is boilerplate. The Office of Disciplinary Counsel is authorized to investigate a grievance against a lawyer to determine whether the lawyer's conduct should affect the lawyer's license to practice law. Under the Washington Supreme Court's Rules for Enforcement of Lawyer Conduct, ELC, a lawyer may be disciplined only upon a showing by a clear preponderance of the evidence that the lawyer violated the Washington Supreme Court's rules of professional conduct. In your grievance, you said that Radio Free Mormon, a lawyer, was discussing another grievance involving Radio Free Mormon on a podcast. You also alleged that Radio Free Mormon used his podcast to assist another person with harassing you. You asserted that RFM's public statements have impacted your employability and contain false statements about you. By rule, disciplinary information in Washington State, unless subject to public disclosure, is kept confidential by the Office of Disciplinary Counsel. Please see the Rules for Enforcement of Lawyer Conduct. That said, grievance and respondents, i.e., me and the person complaining against me, may disclose information in their possession regarding disciplinary matters. Please see ELC 3.4a. The ELC is available online. Regarding what was said, the First Amendment does provide some protections for lawyers from disciplinary actions based on protected activity. That said, even outside the courtroom, lawyers in pending cases are subject to ethical restrictions on speech to which an ordinary citizen would not be. We also note that lawyers' private conduct unrelated to the practice of law may render them subject to discipline. That's the exact same paragraph we've seen in all of these bar complaint dismissals. Nevertheless, while some criminal or civil conduct by a lawyer may violate the RPC, on the available information, we do not believe that we could establish by a clear preponderance of the evidence that Radio Free Mormon violated the RPC or that a court has found any misconduct regarding RFM's actions or statements. Based on the information we have reviewed, there is insufficient evidence to warrant further action. Therefore, we are dismissing your grievance under ELC 5.7a. If you do not mail or deliver to us a written request for review of this grievance within 45 days of the date of this letter, the decision to dismiss your grievance will be final. Sincerely, Courtney Lewis, Disciplinary Counsel, Intake. CC to me with a copy of the grievance. And there you can tell that both the complaint and the copy of the grievance were sent to me at the same time. So that is the end of the letter, the order dismissing the grievance by Rosebud against Radio Free Mormon. Well, I guess nothing says that I'm hitting a nerve more than multiple people filing bar complaints against me because I am exposing the truth that they want to keep hidden. That's about all for tonight. Thank you for joining me. Please hit like, please hit subscribe, please leave a comment below. And if you feel inspired, please go to radiofreemormon.org. As Bill Reel suggested, make a monthly recurring donation today. $5 a month is all I ask. If you want to do more than that, God bless you. Thank you so much for all of you who are donating and supporting the show. Your donations do keep Radio Free Mormon broadcasting behind enemy lines. Until next time, thanks for joining me. Good night, everybody.